Why my sister's wedding ended in tears. And why I don't regret it. My sister always made me feel invisible. She stole credit for my achievements, humiliated me at family gatherings, and even tried to sabotage my relationship. So on her wedding day I stayed quiet. Until it was time for the speeches. That's when I revealed, calmly and politely, a few funny stories. Like how she met the groom while cheating on her ex, and how she mocked his family behind their backs. The room fell silent, her mask shattered, and tears streamed down her face. Was it petty? Maybe. My name is Sloane Harper. And I'm a 27-year-old woman from Oregon. Before I take you down this path of sweet revenge and the twisted family dynamics that led to it, let me tell you, this isn't some made-up soap opera. This is my life, my truth. And the reason why my sister's wedding ended in tears. You might think I'm cruel for what I did, but by the end maybe you'll understand. So, if you like the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It helps to grow our channel and it motivates me to make more interesting stories for you. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where all of you are watching from. I grew up in a small town, in one of those neighborhoods where everyone knew each other's business. My parents, though not rich, were respected. Dad ran a hardware store that had been in the family for generations, and Mom worked as a school counselor. On the surface, we were that nice family everyone thought had it all together. But inside our house, the story was very different. From the moment my sister Celeste was born, she was the shining star. Celeste with the dimples and golden curls. Celeste who could do no wrong. I was 2 years older, quieter, darker-haired, a little more serious. From as far back as I can remember, I felt like I was orbiting her sun. Started small. When we were kids, she'd break something. Mom's favorite vase, Dad's special fishing rod, and somehow I'd get blamed. She'd cry those perfect tears, tell them I was being mean or careless, and I'd stand there, too shocked to argue while they scolded me. I thought it would get better as we got older. I worked hard at school. I was the kid who stayed up late doing extra credit, who actually cared about getting good grades. And I did. I made honor roll, won the science fair in middle school, got into AP classes in high school. Celeste. She barely scraped by. But when report cards came out, my parents would look at mine and say, "Well, you're lucky you're smart, Sloane." Like it wasn't hard work, just some fluke. When Celeste passed a class she was failing, they'd throw her a pizza party. It wasn't just school. When I made varsity track, they said, "Good for you, sweetheart." When Celeste tried out for cheer and didn't even make it past first cuts, they blamed the coach and comforted her like she'd lost the Olympics. The worst part, she didn't just sit back and let the favoritism happen. Celeste was clever. She had this way of planting ideas without seeming like she was doing it. She'd tell Mom all wide-eyed, Sloane was on her phone during dinner again, when I wasn't. Or whisper to Dad that I had an attitude when I was just tired. She twisted little things so my parents saw me the way she wanted them to. I remember one night at dinner, I'd just gotten my acceptance letter from a college I worked so hard for. I was bursting to tell them. Before I could even get the words out, Celeste dropped this fake shy confession. "Mom, Dad, I think I want to go into modeling. My friends say I could really make it." That was it. Conversation over. They spent the whole meal gushing over how beautiful she was, how proud they were that she had dreams. My college letter sat in my lap, forgotten. I didn't even bother showing them until later, and even then they barely reacted. Chipped away at me bit by bit. The subtle sabotage, the way she rewrote every story so she was the hero or the victim and I was invisible or the villain. I started noticing how she'd twist things with our relatives too. At holidays, she'd act like the sweet, doting sister in front of the cousins, then turn around and mock me behind my back. Once I heard her tell our aunt that I was so jealous of her looks that I tried to copy her style. I'd never done anything of the sort, but that didn't matter. People believed her. They always did. By the time I hit 23, I'd graduated with honors, gotten my first real job in marketing, moved into a tiny but cute apartment. I'd hoped that maybe distance would help. But Celeste always found a way to pull me back into her orbit. When I got promoted at work, she'd casually tell the family I only got it because my boss was probably into me. When I started dating someone seriously, she'd accidentally slip embarrassing childhood stories to him, the kind designed to make me look foolish. I used to defend myself. I used to get angry, argue, try to prove she was lying or exaggerating. But every time it backfired. My parents would sigh like I was being dramatic. My relatives would give me those pitying looks like poor Sloane, always so sensitive. And Celeste would smile that knowing little smile, the one that said she'd won again. The turning point came at a family barbecue. I'd been working non-stop for weeks on a big campaign launch, and I finally had a weekend off. I showed up, ready to relax, maybe just exist without the constant comparison. Celeste was already there, holding court as usual. I tried to keep my distance, but she made sure that wouldn't happen. She waited until there was a crowd, cousins, uncles, neighbors, and then with a fake laugh she said, "Oh, Sloane, Tell everyone that story about how you almost burned down your dorm trying to cook. There was no such story. I'd never even lived in a dorm. But the way she said it, the way she tilted her head and grinned, everyone chuckled, assuming I was being modest or embarrassed. I felt that familiar heat rise in my chest. The humiliation, the injustice, the ache of wanting so badly to be seen for who I was, not who she painted me to be. But that day, something inside me shifted. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself or correct her. I smiled right back at her, nodded, and changed the subject. I watched how confused she looked for a second, how thrown off she was when I didn't take the bait. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Celeste thrived on my reactions. Every time I tried to fight back, it gave her more material, more drama, more ways to twist the story in her favor. That's when I stopped. I stopped defending myself. I stopped trying to correct the narrative. Instead, I started listening, watching, remembering. I began to quietly collect every little thing she said, every cruel joke, every petty lie. I didn't need to convince anyone she wasn't perfect. I just needed the right moment. And believe me, that moment came. If you like the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It helps to grow our channel and it motivates me to make more interesting stories for you. And don't forget to post your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. I used to think betrayal was something loud, something dramatic, like a knife in the back or a door slammed in your face. But with Celeste, betrayal came quiet. It came wrapped in a smile, disguised as love, so subtle that for years, I questioned whether it was real at all. Maybe that was her true gift, making me doubt myself even while she chipped away at everything that was mine. After that barbecue where I first decided to stop reacting, I couldn't help but think back to all the little betrayals that had led me to that point. Moments that seemed small at the time, but together built a mountain of hurt I'd been carrying since I was a teenager. The first time I felt the sting of real betrayal from Celeste was the summer I turned 16. That was the year I'd been saving for college with everything I had. Birthday money, babysitting jobs, a part-time gig at the local library. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every week I'd slip my earnings into an envelope I kept hidden in the back of my desk drawer. I knew my parents couldn't afford to help me much, so I was determined to do what I could. One afternoon, I came home from work to find Celeste sitting cross-legged on my bed, painting her nails. She grinned at me like we were best friends. It was rare for her to even come into my room, so I was immediately suspicious. "Hey, Sloane," she said, waving a hand to dry the polish. "I needed a quiet place. Mom and Dad are being annoying." I shrugged it off, not thinking much of it. But 2 days later, when I went to add $20 to my stash, my envelope was gone. Vanished. I tore my room apart, desperate to believe I'd misplaced it. But deep down I knew. When I confronted Celeste, she blinked at me, all wide-eyed innocence. "Why would I take your money? I'm your sister. Don't you trust me?" I told my parents. They scolded me for accusing her without proof. "Maybe you lost it," my dad said. My mom added, "Celeste wouldn't do that. You're under a lot of stress, Sloane. Try to calm down." A week later, Celeste showed up at dinner with a brand new handbag, the kind she'd been drooling over for months. When I asked where she got it, she said a friend gave it to her. My parents smiled, believing her without question. That was the first time I felt something shift inside me. Not just hurt, but a bone-deep understanding that I was alone in this. No one would protect me from her. It didn't stop there. When I started my junior year, I had a small group of friends I cherished. We weren't popular, but we had fun. Movie nights, sleepovers, shared secrets. Celeste, of course, was in a different league. She ran with the girls who had cars at 16, who partied on weekends, who knew all the gossip before it hit the hallways. First, I thought we lived in separate worlds. But Celeste had a way of reaching across the line, pulling strings I couldn't even see. I'll never forget the morning I walked into school and felt the shift. The way people looked at me. The whispers. The sideways glances. I found out why soon enough. Someone, Celeste, though she never admitted it, had spread a rumor that I'd hooked up with a friend's boyfriend at a party. A party I hadn't even gone to. My friends tried to act normal at first, but the seed was planted. Grew. They stopped inviting me places. Stopped answering my texts. When I tried to explain, they looked uncomfortable, like they didn't know who to believe. I knew who started it. Course I did. Celeste had dropped just enough hints to the right people, framed it like concern. "I just don't want Sloane to get hurt, you know? She's been acting different lately. I don't know what's going on with her." When I told my parents, they sighed, exhausted by what they saw as my endless drama. "Maybe you're just being sensitive," my mom said. "Celeste loves you. She wouldn't want to hurt you." I swallowed the words I wanted to scream. Then came the final straw. The one that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. His name was Mason. My first real boyfriend. He was kind, funny, and for some reason I never quite understood he liked me. Not Celeste. Not the idea of me. Just me. I met him during my freshman year of college. We hit it off at a campus event, started dating, and for a while it felt like I was finally stepping out of her shadow. He didn't care about Celeste's charm or my parents' favoritism. He saw me. At first, Celeste acted supportive. She asked about him, teased me in that big sister way that felt almost genuine. But underneath I could sense something coiling. Started small. Little comments when he was around. "Sloan, you're so lucky. Mason's so patient. You can be kinda moody, you know." Or, "Mason, you're a saint for putting up with her study obsession." He laughed them off. I tried to. But I saw the cracks starting to form. Then she ramped it up. She'd text him late at night saying she was worried about me. That I was stressed, that I talked about breaking up with him, that I was unhappy. Lies, every one of them. But told with just enough sincerity that Mason started asking questions. The final blow came at a family event. Celeste pulled Mason aside, whispered something to him. I still don't know exactly what, and when he came back his smile was tight, his eyes troubled. A week later he ended things. Said I wasn't being honest with him. That he felt like he didn't really know me. And Celeste. She was right there to comfort me. Hugging me, telling me I deserved better. Playing the role of the supportive sister so perfectly I almost believed her myself. After that I stopped trusting anyone at face value. But more than that, I stopped trusting that the truth would protect me. Celeste had mastered the art of the lie hidden inside kindness, of betrayal wrapped in sisterly concern. That's when I started documenting everything. I didn't announce it. I didn't let on. But I kept records, screenshots of texts, notes on things she said, things she did, recordings when I could manage them. I saved emails, messages, little scraps of proof. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it at first. I just knew I needed it. Because by then, I understood something I hadn't before. Celeste's power came from controlling the story. And I wasn't going to let her write mine anymore. I remember the night so clearly, like a cruel joke the universe decided to play just when I thought maybe, just maybe, I was stepping out from Celeste's shadow. I'd worked hard, harder than most people knew. Late nights, early mornings, pushing myself at my job until I earned the promotion I'd been chasing for 2 years. It wasn't just a title. It was proof that I was good at something, that my work mattered. My parents had agreed, almost reluctantly, to host a small family dinner to celebrate. It wasn't anything fancy, a backyard barbecue, close relatives, a few neighbors. But for once, it was supposed to be about me. I'd spent the day trying to calm my nerves, hoping for a rare evening where I wouldn't feel like the invisible one. The sun was just starting to set, casting this warm glow over the yard, the kind of golden hour light that makes everything feel softer, gentler. People were laughing, the smell of burgers on the grill filled the air, and I actually let myself relax. My dad even clapped me on the shoulder and said, "We're proud of you, kiddo." I held on to that moment, thinking maybe this time would be different. Then Celeste showed up. She was late, of course, always making an entrance. She floated in wearing this flowy white dress that made her look like she'd stepped off the cover of some lifestyle magazine. Hair perfectly styled, not a single thing out of place. And on her hand, a glittering ring that caught the last bit of sunlight, practically blinding everyone. I felt the shift in the air before anyone spoke. The conversations died down. Heads turned. Celeste smiled like she owned the world and said, "I have an announcement." No one even glanced at me after that. All eyes were on her. "I'm engaged," she beamed, holding out her hand so the ring sparkled for everyone to admire. Gasps, cheers, congratulations. My mom rushed to hug her. My dad actually looked teary. The neighbors clapped. I stood there, frozen, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. This was supposed to be my night. For once, it was supposed to be about something I'd done. But no one cared anymore. Celeste had stolen the spotlight with the same effortless ease she always did. Then I met him. Fiancé. His name was Grant. And God, he seemed perfect. Tall, clean-cut, polite in that all-American boy way. He shook my hand, looked me in the eye and said, "Sloan, I've heard so much about you. I'm really happy to finally meet you." And for a moment I hated myself for liking him, for thinking he seemed decent, for wondering what on earth he was doing with Celeste. As the night went on I watched them. The way he looked at her like she was the sun and stars. The way she leaned into him, playing the role of the doting fiancé so well it could have won awards. And I kept thinking, how did this happen so fast? The last I'd heard, Celeste was still with her long-term boyfriend, a guy named Ethan. They'd been together for almost 4 years. Sure, their relationship had its ups and downs, but Celeste had always bragged about how devoted he was, how he spoiled her. And now, here she was, engaged to someone else. And no one seemed to question it. No one asked what happened to Ethan. Tried. That night, after the guests had thinned out and the yard was quiet again, I found a moment alone with her. I kept my voice light, Like I wasn't dying to know the truth. Hey Celeste. I didn't realize you and Ethan had broken up. When did that happen? She gave me this look, half smug, half annoyed, like I'd dared to bring reality into her fairy tale. Oh Sloane. Ethan and I weren't serious. We'd been on and off for ages. Grant's different. He's the one. And that was it. The end of the conversation as far as she was concerned. She turned away, already pulling out her phone, already done with me. But it didn't sit right. Nothing about it did. The timeline didn't make sense. Just a few months before, I'd seen photos of her and Ethan on vacation together, playing the happy couple. Now she was engaged to someone else. And no one blinked an eye. Celeste had always been good at spinning stories, but this one felt too thin even for her. I started paying attention. Not to what she said, because I'd learned by then that her words were just smoke and mirrors, but to what slipped through the cracks. I noticed how she avoided talking about how she met Grant. When people asked, she'd laugh and say, "Oh, it's such a long story. Maybe at the wedding." Or she'd change the subject, redirect the attention somewhere else. I noticed how she flinched ever so slightly when someone mentioned Ethan's name, how her smile froze for just a second too long. Then came the clue that cracked it all open. A mutual friend, someone who'd always been more my friend than hers, reached out. We were catching up over coffee, and she hesitated before saying, "I don't know if I should tell you this, but do you know how Celeste and Grant really met?" My stomach sank. "No," I said. "Tell me." "They met at Ethan's company holiday party. Last year." She was still with Ethan then. I stared at her, not sure I'd heard right. She nodded, confirming it. "Yeah, I saw it happen. She was flirting with Grant all night." Ethan had no idea. I thought maybe it was just harmless at the time, but, well, I guess not. Everything clicked into place. The rushed engagement, the vague stories, the awkward pauses when Ethan's name came up. She'd been seeing Grant behind Ethan's back. She'd built her perfect engagement on a lie. And no one knew except me now. I didn't say anything that day. I didn't confront her. I didn't blow it up at a family dinner like part of me wanted to. Instead, I did what I'd started doing for a while now. I took the information, tucked it away, and waited. Kept watching. I saw how Grant adored her, how he seemed so genuine. And it made me angry. Not at him but at her. How easily she fooled people. At how she'd taken this man, convinced him she was someone worth loving, while building their relationship on betrayal. And I kept wondering, why didn't she just tell the truth? Why didn't she just own it? But that was the thing about Celeste. The truth was never enough for her. The truth wasn't shiny. It wasn't dramatic or perfect or worthy of applause. She needed the fairy tale. She needed to be the girl who found the one after a string of heartbreaks, not the girl who cheated on a devoted boyfriend. She needed to be the sister who got the ring, the praise, the spotlight, at any cost. So I let her have it for a while. I smiled at the engagement party. I helped with wedding plans when asked. All the while I waited. Because I knew the day would come when the perfect image she'd built would crack. And when it did, I'd be ready. I wasn't sure how or when. But I knew this. The truth has a way of coming out. And when it did, I wanted to make sure Celeste couldn't rewrite it again. Not this time. Not with Grant. Not with me. When Celeste asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, I could feel the trap before the words even left her mouth. She didn't ask out of love or sisterly affection. She asked because she wanted me close, where she could keep me under her thumb. Where she could make sure I played the part she'd always assigned me. The side character in her perfect little production. I should have said no. God, I wanted to. But I could see the look in my mother's eyes, the hopeful, almost pleading expression as she clutched her hands together and said, "It would mean so much to your sister, Sloane. Please." So I agreed. I smiled and nodded and swallowed down the dread that settled like a stone in my stomach. From that moment on, Celeste made sure every piece of wedding planning became a stage for my humiliation. It started small, almost imperceptible. During the first bridesmaid dress fitting, she accidentally ordered my dress a size too small, then laughed in front of the others as I struggled to zip it up. "Oh, Sloane, I guess all that stress eating finally caught up with you," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The other bridesmaids, most of them her friends from college and work, giggled awkwardly. I forced a smile, cheeks burning, and said nothing. Then there were the group chats, those endless streams of messages about colors, centerpieces, and favors. Celeste made a habit of forgetting to include me in key conversations, then blaming me when I didn't have the right information. When I politely pointed it out, she'd act exasperated. "You're always so sensitive, Sloane. Just try to keep up." And again, the others would titter or roll their eyes, as if I were the difficult one. What stung most wasn't just the jabs or the passive-aggressive comments. It was how she started weaving her magic around Grant's friends. From the moment I'd met them, they'd been warm and welcoming, curious about me, eager to include me in conversations. But little by little I noticed the shift. They began to look at me with polite distance, as if they weren't sure what to make of me anymore. Didn't take long to figure out why. Celeste, in her charming offhand way, was poisoning the well. She'd drop little remarks when I wasn't around, suggesting I was bitter, jealous, difficult to please. At a bridal shower, I overheard her telling one of Grant's close friends' wives that I'd been struggling with some personal issues, and that I tended to lash out without meaning to. The woman's expression softened with sympathy when she looked at me, but I felt sick. Celeste was turning me into a charity case. I wish I could say I didn't let it get to me, but that would be a lie. There were nights I went home and cried, exhausted from trying to keep my head up while she chipped away at me in front of everyone. But as much as it hurt, something else started to rise in me, a cold clarity. Because amid all the chaos, I began to see what no one else seemed to notice. Cracks. Little hairline fractures in Celeste's perfect facade. It started with the way she acted when Grant wasn't in the room. When he was there, she was sweetness itself. Gentle touches, adoring glances, soft laughter. But the moment he stepped away, her mask slipped. Her smile would flatten, her eyes would narrow. She'd snap at the vendors, bark orders at the planner, roll her eyes at the bridesmaids. I watched as she belittled a florist so harshly the woman left in tears, only for Celeste to shrug it off as dealing with incompetence. Then there were the lies. Tiny, careless ones at first. She told the caterer she was allergic to shellfish, though I knew she wasn't. She claimed she'd designed the invitations herself, though I'd seen the proofs from the graphic designer. At first, I thought these were just harmless exaggerations. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized she couldn't help herself. She lied about everything, big or small, to make herself look better. And Grant? He didn't seem to see any of it. Or maybe he chose not to. He looked at her like she was flawless, his dream woman. And Celeste played the part to perfection when he was near. But I began to wonder how long she could keep up the act. So I started paying closer attention. I kept my mouth shut, let her think I was beaten down and compliant. But quietly I collected evidence. I saved screenshots of her texts when she badmouthed vendors or friends, then turned around and acted sweet to their faces. I noted the times she contradicted herself about wedding details. I kept a record of the stories she told about how she and Grant met, each one slightly different depending on the audience. There was the time she said they'd met at a charity event. Another time, she claimed it was at a friend's barbecue. The truth, the one I knew that they'd met while she was still with Ethan, was the story she never told. One night, at a small dinner with Grant's family, I saw my chance. His mother, a kind woman with sharp eyes, asked Celeste how she and Grant had fallen in love. Celeste launched into some fairy tale about love at first sight at a bookstore. But as she spoke, I saw the flicker of hesitation in her gaze, the way her voice faltered for just a second. And I saw Grant's mother tilt her head, just slightly, as if something didn't add up. That was when I knew. Celeste might have fooled everyone so far, but she was getting sloppy. The bigger the production, the harder it was for her to keep all the lies straight. From then on, I watched for those moments, the slip-ups, the inconsistencies, the cracks in her carefully constructed image. I listened when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I stayed quiet when she mocked me, when she tried to embarrass me, because I knew I wouldn't need to fight back with words. All I needed was the right moment. The perfect moment to pull back the curtain and let everyone see her for who she really was. And that moment was coming. I could feel it like a storm building on the horizon. All I had to do was wait. By the time Celeste's wedding was only a few weeks away, I thought I had seen every trick in her arsenal. I had endured the small humiliations, the whispered lies, the subtle digs in front of friends and family. I had stood by quietly as she painted herself as the perfect bride-to-be while twisting me into the villain of her story. But nothing prepared me for the final straw. It started with something that seemed small, almost petty on the surface. My partner, Nathan, whom I had been with for nearly 2 years, was deliberately excluded from everything. When Celeste first announced the engagement, she had been all smiles, telling me how excited she was to have Nathan be part of our family. She even made a point of saying she couldn't wait for him to attend all the events leading up to the wedding. But as planning moved forward, his name slowly disappeared from every invitation, every email thread, every seating chart. At first, I thought it was a simple oversight. Planning a wedding could be chaotic, and mistakes happened, so I mentioned it gently. I asked Celeste about the engagement party invite that never came for Nathan. I asked about the bridal shower where he was left out of the guest list, even though other partners were included. Each time, she brushed it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Sloan, I didn't think he'd want to come to that," she'd say. Or, "There just wasn't space, but of course he's welcome at the wedding." But the wedding itself became the clearest sign of her intent. The formal invitation arrived, addressed only to me. No +1. No mention of Nathan at all. I stared at the envelope, the beautiful calligraphy spelling out just my name, and felt the familiar sting of Celeste's manipulations. She wanted me isolated. She wanted me to show up alone, vulnerable, easier to control. Nathan, bless him, tried to reassure me. "It's fine," he said. "Maybe it really is just a mistake. Or maybe she's overwhelmed. Don't let it ruin your night." But I could see in his eyes that he felt the hurt too. He had always been supportive, always tried to bridge the gap between Celeste and me, even when I told him it was hopeless. And now, he was being pushed aside like he didn't matter. But it didn't stop there. That would have been too easy. Celeste always needed to go one step further, to twist the knife in a way that would leave a scar. The first hint came when one of Grant's groomsmen, a guy named Tyler, approached me at a rehearsal dinner planning meeting. He was awkward, fidgeting, his words hesitant. "Hey Sloane, I didn't want to make things weird, but maybe you should be careful how friendly you are with Grant. People are starting to talk." I blinked at him, completely thrown. Talk about what? He wouldn't meet my gaze. Just maybe dial it back a little. You know how rumors get started. Felt cold all over. I had barely spoken to Grant except in group settings, always polite, always guarded. What rumors could there possibly be? But as I pieced things together, the answer became chillingly clear. Celeste. It wasn't enough to sideline my partner. It wasn't enough to humiliate me in small daily ways. Now she wanted to poison the well so thoroughly that even Grant's friends and family saw me as a threat. She had started whispering that I was being too friendly, too interested, that I was trying to come between her and her future husband. The audacity of it nearly took my breath away. After everything she had done, the lies, the betrayal of Ethan, the manipulation that had built her entire relationship with Grant, she had the nerve to paint me as the one who couldn't be trusted. I wanted to confront her. God, I wanted to. I imagined the words I would say, the look on her face when I called her out. I pictured the silence that would fall over the room, the shock on everyone's faces as the truth finally came out. But I didn't. And that choice, the decision to stay quiet, to hold my fire, wasn't made out of fear. It was strategy. Because in that moment, as angry as I was, as much as I wanted to shout the truth from the rooftops, I knew it wouldn't work. Not yet. If I had confronted her then, she would have turned it around on me like she always did. She would have played the victim, painted me as the jealous, bitter sister trying to ruin her special day. People would have believed her. They always had. And the damage would have been done. No, I realized. This wasn't the time for a loud fight. This wasn't the time for an emotional outburst that would only feed her narrative. This was the time to wait. To let her dig her own grave a little deeper. So I smiled when I saw her. I played the part of the supportive sister. I let her think she'd won. But inside I was done. Done being silent. Done letting her rewrite the story. I watched and listened and took note of every little misstep she made. I gathered my evidence, not just in texts and screenshots, but in memories, witnesses, moments, cracks in her lies that others began to notice. Because the perfect moment was coming. The one where her mask would slip not just in front of me, but in front of everyone who mattered. And when that moment came, I wouldn't need to shout. I wouldn't need to argue or defend myself. I'd simply hold up the truth and let it speak for itself. Celeste thought she was orchestrating the perfect wedding, the perfect love story, the perfect life. But she had forgotten something vital. The bigger the lie, the harder it falls apart. And she had built her house of cards so high, so precarious, that all it would take was the right push at the right time. And I would be the one to give it. The morning of Celeste's wedding dawned with a kind of eerie stillness that didn't match the storm I felt brewing inside. I woke before the sun, lying in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling as the first light crept across the walls. Outside, the world seemed hushed, as if it too was holding its breath. The day Celeste had built her entire fantasy around had finally arrived. And everything was in place for her grand performance. The venue was breathtaking, I'll give her that. A sprawling estate with manicured gardens that seemed to stretch endlessly, dotted with white roses and soft pink peonies, the kind of place you see in wedding magazines. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and expensive perfume, and everywhere I looked, people were smiling, laughing, caught up in the magic of the day. Celeste had made sure every detail was perfect. The bridesmaids gathered in a suite filled with sunlight, lace, and champagne. Celeste stood in the center of it all, radiant in her designer gown, her hair and makeup flawless. She glowed, but not from happiness, not really. It was the glow of someone who had gotten everything they wanted, who stood on top of the world, certain no one could touch them. I watched her as I sipped my glass of water, staying on the edges of the room. I was quiet. Too quiet, perhaps, because Celeste kept shooting me little glances, as if she couldn't quite figure out what I was thinking. For once, I didn't give her anything to feed on. No protests, no sighs, no reactions at all. Just calm observation. There were moments, though, small, almost invisible cracks in her perfect day, that I noticed even if no one else did. When she greeted Grant's mother that morning, I saw the tightness in the older woman's smile, the way her eyes seemed to study Celeste, searching for something beneath the surface. There was a polite hug, but not the warmth one might expect between a mother-in-law and her new daughter. Celeste didn't seem to notice, or maybe she chose not to. At the pre-ceremony brunch, I caught snippets of conversations between guests. A few whispered about the strange way Celeste had snapped at the planner over a minor detail about the flowers. Someone else mentioned how she told two completely different stories about how she and Grant had met, one to Grant's college friends, another to our family friends. Little things, but enough to spark confusion, enough to plant seeds of doubt. But Celeste didn't see any of it. She floated through the day as if she were untouchable, basking in the attention, the compliments, the endless praise. I stayed in my role, the dutiful sister, the quiet bridesmaid, the one no one expected to make waves. But inside I was watching everything. I was waiting. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The sun broke through the clouds at just the right moment, casting a golden glow over the couple as they exchanged vows. The guests sighed, some even wiped away tears. Celeste looked at Grant with adoration so well, practiced it could have fooled even me if I didn't know better. Grant looked at her like she was everything he'd ever wanted. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then came the reception. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and candlelight. The tables were draped in ivory linen, the place settings gleamed, and everywhere there was laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of a perfect celebration. I stayed quiet through it all, sitting at my table, smiling when expected, nodding at polite conversation. People came and went, offering congratulations, sharing stories, dancing. Celeste made her rounds, radiant, glowing, charming everyone in sight. But still, I caught those small moments. The slight frown when someone mentioned Ethan's name by accident, the fleeting look of panic when Grant's mother asked her about something she'd forgotten she lied about. And then the moment arrived. Dinner was winding down, the cake had been cut, and the DJ lowered the music as the best man stepped up to the microphone for his speech. He told stories of Grant's kindness, his loyalty, his steady heart. People laughed, they clapped, they cheered. Then the DJ's voice rang out, clear and cheerful. And now we'd love to hear from the maid of honor, Celeste's wonderful sister Sloane. All heads turned toward me. I felt the weight of their gazes. Celeste's eyes were wide, her smile frozen, as if she suddenly remembered I existed in this story. I rose slowly, smoothing my dress, taking the microphone that was handed to me. My heart was steady. My hands didn't shake. And I smiled. Not the brittle, polite smile I'd worn all day, but a real smile. One that came from knowing that the moment I'd been waiting for was finally here. The ballroom seemed to quiet all at once, as if the walls themselves leaned in to listen. I glanced at Celeste. She was still smiling, but I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. I could almost hear her thinking, what is she going to say? I took a breath, looked around at the sea of expectant faces, and began to speak. And in that instant I knew. The calm was over. The storm was about to begin. The weight of the microphone in my hand felt heavier than I expected. Maybe it was because I knew this was more than just a speech. It was the moment I had carried inside me for so long, the moment I had quietly, patiently waited for, as Celeste spun her web of lies around everyone who loved her. The ballroom was still, all eyes on me. The golden light from the chandelier seemed to dim, or maybe that was just in my mind, as if even the universe wanted to mute the glamour of the evening and focus on the truth. I smiled at Celeste. A real smile, not forced or brittle, but soft, almost affectionate. I let my gaze drift over the guests, took in their kind faces, their eager expressions. Grant was holding Celeste's hand at their table, looking at me with warmth, expecting the sweet, harmless words that so often came in these speeches. I saw his mother watching me closely, as she had all day, as if she sensed what was coming before even I spoke a word. I cleared my throat gently. Good evening, everyone. I began, my voice calm and steady. First, I want to thank you all for being here today to celebrate my sister and Grant. It's truly a beautiful day, and I'm honored to stand here as part of it. There were a few nods, soft smiles, polite encouragement from the crowd. Celeste's face relaxed a little, her fingers tightening around Grant's like she was trying to tether herself to him, to the image she had worked so hard to create. I could stand up here and tell you all about how Celeste was the perfect sister growing up, I continued, and there was a small ripple of laughter. Exactly what I intended. But I think most of you already know that's not quite true. Celeste was spirited, determined. She always knew what she wanted, and she wasn't afraid to go after it. More laughter, and I let it linger for a moment. I remember one summer when we were kids, maybe 8 or 9. Celeste convinced me to trade my entire collection of stickers for a half-eaten chocolate bar. She promised me it was magic chocolate that would make me taller overnight. The room chuckled, charmed by the image. Even Celeste laughed a little too loudly, relieved that this was the kind of story I was telling. But of course I didn't grow an inch. I just lost my stickers and got a stomachache. That was Celeste for you. Always able to make you believe the impossible, always able to sell a story. The laughter softened. Few people exchanged glances. Grant smiled, though it faltered just slightly. And as we grew up, Celeste's gift for storytelling only got stronger. She could make you see what she wanted you to see. She could make you believe what she wanted you to believe. I let the words hang there, gentle but pointed. I saw the first flicker of confusion cross Grant's face. Celeste's smile was tighter now, her posture a little straighter, like she was bracing herself. I remember when Celeste first introduced us to Grant. It was magical, wasn't it? This handsome, kind man who seemed to adore her. She told us about how they met. Oh, so many sweet versions of that story. Sometimes it was a bookstore, sometimes a friend's barbecue, sometimes a charity event. A murmur moved through the crowd. Grant's brows drew together, and I saw his mother lean forward slightly. Her expression sharp, attentive. But the truth is, Celeste met Grant at a company holiday party. A party she attended with someone else at the time. Someone she'd been with for years. Ethan. There it was, the first crack of silence, heavy and immediate. I heard a glass clink as someone set it down too hard. I saw Grant's eyes widen. His hand slipping from Celeste's. Her face froze, lips parted as if to stop me, but no words came. I kept my voice soft, even warm, as if I was still sharing harmless childhood memories. But my words were deliberate, measured. And I don't say this to embarrass anyone. I say it because today we're celebrating love. Real love deserves honesty. Real love deserves to be built on truth. I know how much Grant's family means to him. How much this union is supposed to bring two families together. That's what weddings are for, aren't they? I paused, let my gaze sweep across the room. The guests were no longer smiling. They were listening, really listening, their expressions shifting from amusement to confusion, then something closer to disbelief. I remember Celeste telling me once, when we were teenagers, that if you want people to love you, you just have to tell them what they want to hear. Make them feel special, she said. And she was good at it. She could make you feel like the center of the universe. Celeste's hands were trembling now, though she tried to hide it by clasping them together in her lap. Grant was staring at her, confusion darkening into something else. Doubt, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. And isn't that what we all want? To be special to someone. To be loved for who we are, not who someone pretends to be. I've watched Celeste charm so many of you. I've watched her win over friends, family, even strangers. But I've also heard the words she said behind closed doors. I've heard the jokes she made about Grant's family, about the accents she mimicked, the traditions she rolled her eyes at. And I stayed quiet because I thought it wasn't my place. There was no laughter now. Just stillness, and the soft, almost imperceptible shift of people turning toward Celeste, their faces searching hers for denial, for reassurance, for anything that might make sense of what I was saying. But Celeste had no words. Not now. I'm not standing here to hurt anyone. Truly I'm not. I'm standing here because I believe Grant deserves the truth. I believe all of you deserve the truth. And because, after all these years, I finally decided I wouldn't let silence be my gift to my sister on her wedding day. I smiled again, soft and polite, as if I'd just recited a sweet poem. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels thick, that presses against your skin and fills your ears. I handed the microphone back to the DJ, whose face was pale, unsure of what to do next. I returned to my seat as if nothing had happened, my heart steady, my mind clear. Around me, the illusion Celeste had worked so hard to build was cracking, crumbling, falling apart under the weight of truths she thought she'd buried. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. Felt free. For a moment after I returned to my seat, it felt as if the world had stopped spinning. The soft hum of conversation, the clink of silverware, the buzz of music in the background. All of it vanished. What remained was a silence so loud it seemed to echo through the grand hall. Celeste sat frozen at the head table, her perfectly painted smile now a brittle, broken thing. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, as if trying to hold her world together with sheer force. But no amount of willpower could stop what had already begun. Grant was the first to move. He stood so abruptly that his chair scraped harshly against the polished floor, the sound sharp enough to make a few guests flinch. His face was pale, his jaw tight. His eyes fixed on Celeste as if he were seeing her for the first time. Celeste turned to him, reaching out with one trembling hand. "Grant, please," she began, her voice thin, breaking. But he stepped back, just out of her reach. his expression a strange mixture of heartbreak and fury. Is it true? His voice cut through the room, low but firm, demanding an answer. Tell me right now, Celeste. Is what she said true? The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some stared down at their plates. Others exchanged wide-eyed looks, as if they couldn't believe they were witnessing the implosion of what was supposed to be the happiest day of two people's lives. Celeste opened her mouth, but no words came. Her lips moved, but she couldn't seem to form an answer. And that was answer enough. Grant's mother rose from her seat, her expression unreadable, but her eyes were hard. She placed a hand on her son's arm as if to steady him, but he shook his head, his gaze never leaving Celeste. I trusted you, he said quietly, the pain in his voice sharper than any shout could have been. God, I loved you. I defended you when people had doubts. And this whole time you were lying to me. To my family. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, Celeste finally choked out. I just wanted today to be perfect. Love you. I do. Grant gave a bitter, hollow laugh. You love me. Or do you love what I gave you? The image. The praise. The chance to play princess in your perfect little fairy tale. Her tears started then, real tears, or at least they seemed real. But the spell was broken. The crowd that had once adored her, that had clapped and cooed over every detail of her wedding, now looked at her with something else. Confusion, disappointment, even disgust. Voices rose. From our side of the family, my mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Sloane, how could you do this? Your sister's wedding day, she cried, turning to me with horror, as if I'd set fire to the building rather than spoken the truth. But my father, quiet, usually so willing to go along with whatever kept the peace, looked at Celeste, then at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes. Regret that maybe he'd been too blind for too long. Grant's father was red-faced, furious, demanding answers. His mother's calm mask cracked, her voice shaking as she asked Celeste how she could mock their family behind their backs after they'd welcomed her so warmly. Some guests began to leave, uncomfortable with the scene, unwilling to stay and watch the train wreck any longer. Others stayed, drawn in by the drama, unable to look away. A cousin of Grant's approached me quietly, touched my arm. Thank you, she whispered. Someone needed to say it. We suspected, but no one wanted to be the first. But not everyone felt that way. One of Celeste's bridesmaids shot me a look of pure venom, her voice sharp as she hissed. You ruined everything. You're jealous, that's all this is. And Celeste, she fell apart. The calm, composed bride who had controlled every detail of this day was gone. In her place was a woman unraveling at the seams, begging, pleading, trying to explain herself in fragments of sentences that only made things worse. I didn't mean it, the things I said about your family. I was nervous, I didn't know what to say. I loved Ethan, but it wasn't the same. Grant, you're different. It's different with you. But Grant wasn't hearing it anymore. His trust had shattered, and nothing she could say would glue it back together. He looked around at the watching crowd, his face pale with shame and anger, and shook his head. I can't do this, he said. Not like this. And with that, he turned and walked out, his mother and father following, his friends moving after him in stunned silence. Celeste tried to go after him, but she stumbled, nearly falling, caught by one of the groomsmen who looked as if he wanted to let her hit the floor. The fairy tale was over, the illusion gone. The princess had been unmasked in front of everyone she tried to impress, and there was no putting that mask back on. I sat quietly as the chaos unfolded around me, feeling no triumph, no glee, just a deep, quiet relief. The truth was out. The storm had passed. And for once, I wasn't the one left standing in the wreckage. It's been almost 2 years since that day, the day that tore through my family like a storm and left everything bare and broken in its wake. And not once, not for a second, have I regretted it. When I look back at Celeste's wedding, I don't see a ruined day. I see the day I stopped being invisible. The day I stopped letting someone else write the story of who I was. I see it as the day I finally stepped out of the shadows and let the truth speak for itself. And for the first time it was enough. After the wedding, the fallout was as messy and painful as you might expect. Celeste tried, of course. She tried to glue together the pieces of her shattered image, to convince people that what happened had been a misunderstanding, that I'd exaggerated, that I'd acted out of jealousy or bitterness. For a while, a few people believed her. My mother, for one, clung to the idea that I'd ruined my sister's big day out of spite. She couldn't accept the truth. Not right away. Maybe she still can't, even now. But the cracks were too deep, the truth's too plain to ignore. Grant didn't come back. He didn't call her, didn't return her messages. His family quietly cut ties with her. And no amount of charm, no tearful apologies, no carefully spun stories could change what people had seen with their own eyes. The perfect, golden image Celeste had worked so hard to create had crumbled, and try as she might, she couldn't hide the mess. Celeste left town not long after. She said it was for a fresh start, but everyone knew she was running. Running from the whispers, from the glances that lingered a little too long, from the people who now saw through her act. She moved to a city where no one knew her, tried to rebuild, to create a new version of herself. But from what I hear, it hasn't gone the way she hoped. The thing about masks is, once they slip, it gets harder and harder to wear them convincingly. And me. My life has never been quieter, and I mean that in the best way. For so long I lived in Celeste's shadow. I let her dictate who I was in the eyes of the people around me. The sister who wasn't as pretty, or as charming, or as accomplished. The sister who was too sensitive, too serious, too difficult. I tried so hard to keep the peace, to be what my family wanted me to be, to smooth over Celeste's damage and swallow my own hurt. But that day at the wedding changed everything. I stopped trying to play the game. I stopped trying to make people see me the way I thought they should. And when I let go of that, something incredible happened. I found peace. I moved out of the city a few months after the wedding, into a small town where I could breathe. Nathan and I bought a little house with a garden, nothing fancy, but ours. He stood by me through it all, never once making me feel guilty, never once questioning my choice to speak up. Together we built a life that feels honest, simple, and real. I don't see my mother much these days. She still struggles with what happened. Every conversation with her feels like navigating a minefield of unspoken words and lingering disappointment. My father, on the other hand, has slowly come around. We talk more now than we ever did before. I think part of him wishes he'd seen it all sooner. Maybe he feels he failed me in some way by letting Celeste's games go on as long as they did. I don't blame him. We were all caught in her spell. Some of my extended family reached out in the months after the wedding. Quiet messages, small apologies, people admitting they had seen things, sensed things, but hadn't wanted to rock the boat. I don't hold it against them. It's easy to believe in the fairy tale, especially when it's presented so perfectly. Do I ever feel guilty about what I did? About the timing of it, the impact it had? Well, not even a little. Because here's the truth that no one really talks about. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is stop protecting a lie. Sometimes love doesn't mean staying silent and letting someone hurt everyone around them. Sometimes love means telling the truth, even when it costs you. I spent years trying to be the good daughter, the good sister, the peacemaker. And it nearly broke me. That day at the wedding wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about finally stepping out of a role I never chose and refusing to play it any longer. It was about choosing myself, my dignity, my truth, my peace, over the illusion of harmony that never truly existed. I don't know if Celeste will ever change. Part of me hopes she does. I hope she finds a way to be real, to stop performing, to stop needing to be the center of every story. But that's not my burden to carry anymore. I let that go the day I stood up with that microphone in my hand and told the truth. And that's the gift that came from all of this. Freedom. Freedom from the weight of secrets. Freedom from the exhausting task of managing everyone else's emotions while swallowing my own. Freedom from the invisible chains that kept me small so Celeste could shine. My life isn't flashy. It isn't perfect. But it's mine, fully and honestly mine. I wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and I like the person I see. Not because she's flawless, but because she's real. That's worth more than all the applause, all the admiration, all the praise Celeste ever chased. And when I think about that day, when I remember the look on her face as the truth unfolded, the silence that followed, the way the illusion finally shattered, I don't feel guilt. Feel relief. Feel peace. Feel free.